You know that feeling, right? You're lying in bed, you're totally wiped out, but your brain just will not shut down. It's just racing with thoughts about yesterday, all your plans for tomorrow, replaying conversations. It's like there's a motor just humming inside your head. Well, if that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. So let's dive into the science behind our crazy busy brains.
I mean, this is the big question, isn't it? Why is it so hard to just stop? We're living in this world that's all about the hustle and being on 24/7, but that really comes at a cost. And this struggle to switch off, it isn't some kind of personal failure. It's actually a feature of how our brains are wired. Understanding that wiring is the very first step to learning how to work with our brain instead of constantly fighting against it.
Yeah, and all that constant mental chatter, it has real physical consequences. I mean, take a look at this list. Does any of it seem familiar? The racing thoughts, trouble sleeping, that awful wired but tired feeling? Researchers have a name for this state. They call it hyperarousal, and it's a key feature of stuff like chronic insomnia. It's almost like your nervous system is just stuck in high gear, even when you are desperate to hit the brakes. Okay, so what exactly is this engine that's always running in the background? Well, neuroscientists have actually found it, and it has a name. It's time to meet the main character in the story of our busy brain, the default mode network, or DMN for short. So, the DMN is basically what your brain gets up to when you're not focusing on a specific task. It's the network that lights up when you're just daydreaming, thinking about the past, or maybe worrying a little about the future. It's the hub of self-referential thought, which is just a fancy way of saying it's the part of your brain that thinks about, well, you. And when it gets overactive, it can really trap us in those endless loops of worry and self-criticism. And this isn't just some abstract idea. We can actually see it. This fMRI scan here shows the default mode network in action. No, don't worry about all the acronyms and scientific names. Just notice how all these different areas, from the front of the brain all the way to the back, light up and connect to each other. These are the physical parts of your brain responsible for that inner monologue. The easiest way to get a handle on the DMN is to think of it as your brain's autopilot. The moment you stop actively steering your attention towards something specific, your brain just defaults to this mode. It just starts to wander and plan and remember things. Now, that can be great for creativity, but when that autopilot gets stuck in the on position, that's when it becomes the source of that relentless mental noise. So if our autopilot is overactive, how do we get back in the cockpit and take manual control? Well, that brings us to the intervention, and I really want you to reframe how you think about this. This isn't about being passive, it's an active, targeted workout for your brain. And this is the core idea right here. Mindfulness meditation is, at its heart, a practice of training your attention. It's about learning to notice when your mind has wandered off, when that DMN autopilot has kicked in, and then gently, without judgment, guiding your focus back. Every single time you do that, it's like a bicep curl for your attention muscles. You're actively training your brain to regulate its own autopilot. Okay, a mental workout sounds pretty good in theory, but does it actually, do anything? The evidence says a resounding yes, and honestly, it's pretty remarkable. We're not just talking about feeling a little calmer. We're talking about physically observable changes in the brain's actual wiring. There was this fascinating fMRI study that compared total beginners to people with over 1,000 hours of meditation practice, and the results were just stark. It turns out that experienced meditators showed weaker connections in the parts of the DMN that are tied to self-criticism and mind-wandering, but at the exact same time, they showed stronger connections in the parts of the network that help us stay aware of the present moment. This image just illustrates that rewiring perfectly. So, see the dotted lines? Those show the connections that quieted down in the long-term meditators. Those are the links between those chattering, self-focused hubs. And the solid lines? That's what got stronger, the pathways that help maintain a calm, present-moment focus. They had literally reshaped the functional connections inside their own brains. So why does any of this matter? This is the crucial point. This isn't just cool brain trivia. Having a weaker connection between the parts of your brain responsible for rumination and that inner critic means you are, on a neurological level, less likely to get stuck in those destructive loops of anxiety and self-judgment. The mental workout produces a physical change that leads to greater mental peace. It's that direct. I mean, rewiring your brain is already a total game changer, but the science actually points to something even deeper, something that goes beyond the nervous system and right down to our very chromosomes. And this raises a pretty wild question. Could a mental practice actually influence the physical process of aging itself? So, to understand this, we need to talk about these things called telomeres. Telomeres are these tiny protective caps on the ends of our DNA strands. Every single time a cell divides, these caps get just a little bit shorter. Their length is a key biomarker for cellular aging, and shorter telomeres are linked to age-related diseases and, believe it or not, a shorter lifespan. The classic analogy, and it's a great one, is to think of them as the little plastic tips on the end of a shoelace, right? Just like that tip stops the lace from unraveling and fraying, telomeres protect our chromosomes. As they wear down, our genetic information becomes way more vulnerable to damage. Okay, so here's the bombshell. A major meta-analysis, which is when scientists combine the results of a bunch of different studies to get a more powerful conclusion. This one looked at 11 studies, and it found a significant link between meditation and telomere length. Now, that number you see, G equals 0.40, that's just a measure of the effect size. In simple terms, it means the difference isn't just random chance, it is a real, measurable effect. People who meditate appear to have longer telomeres than people who don't, period. The researchers who did this analysis did not mince words. Their conclusion was, and I quote, meditation-based interventions may prevent telomere attrition or increase telomere length. Just let that sink in for a second. This suggests that a mental practice, just managing our attention, could be directly impacting our cellular health and the very biology of how we age. So we started with a really relatable problem, a brain that just won't switch off. But the science shows we're not helpless. We have the capacity to train our attention and quiet that internal chatterbox in our brain. And the benefits might not even stop there, potentially extending all the way down to the protective caps on our DNA. So that leaves us with a final, and I think pretty provocative thought. If our minds can reshape our brains and actually influence ourselves, what other limits have we put on ourselves that are just waiting to be broken?